we could keep this very short. Galway are definitely going to win.
There's a lot of lads down the hospital that'll be getting statues before me, so there is.
Described as a blessing that thought he was missing. Strange kind of blessing, Patrick.
That national narrative, and does my head in, that we're reliant on Joe Canning. Like, oh my God.
Turkey Burke was in full forward, causing all sorts of problems. Then they were able to bring Badger on for Turkey.
Some might say he did a good job on Conor Whelan. I would say, from my point of view, that he spent half the day assaulting him.
If you want a better tomorrow, start heading for it today. Visit Tony Burke Motors, your local Toyota retailer, and find out how you can lower your emissions and pay less tax than a diesel with Toyota's incredible range of self-charging hybrid cars. There's never been a better time to join the thousands of Galway drivers who've made Toyota the #1 selling car brand in Galway for the 7th consecutive year. Visit TonyBurkeMotors.ie to search our fantastic selection of approved used cars. Start your electric journey in a Toyota hybrid today. Contact Tony Burke Motors on 480123 or email sales@TonyBurkeMotors.ie. Toyota, built for a better world.
Well, we asked for goals and we delivered. I mean, the power of this podcast, David, continues to show no bounds. Brilliant day at the office on Sunday against Waterford. I mean, we Galway people, we can go to games and watch games with the best of intentions, but I don't think anyone could have foreseen such a brilliant display, in terms of just attacking, just going all out for it really, and being so sharp and so fit, and everything they did was done just to a T. And then you're racking up a score of 428 against a team of the quality of Waterford, and a team who produced a fairly decent display on the day as well. This wasn't Westmeath we were playing again by any means, but fantastic, David. And I guess it shows that we're trending in the right direction at the right time, with championship coming around the corner in 4 weeks' time, and we're in a good place heading in towards that now, aren't we?
Yeah, we asked for goals. Can we ask for an All-Ireland title now, or Dean McCarthy? Yeah. Can we ask this? Is it too early yet to be asking for that? I agree with you completely. Geez, I thought it was a super game. Really, really good quality game. I know there was a few Kilkenny lads on Twitter complaining about defending, but Jesus Christ, I hate to start it off on a moan, because it's just is, but they're just my God, would you just appreciate what you're getting? It's sunshine hurling in the sun. It was perfect conditions for hurling. Both teams made the most of it. Both teams went balls out, we'll say, for it. From the start, from the Galway, I suppose we'll get into a bit earlier, but you think from the start that Galway were, they looked a little off it in the early stages. You're thinking maybe, okay, we're holding a bit back here in reserve for the league, but that's just that turnaround. I think we were trailed by 7 at one point, turn around and lead by 4 at half time. Phenomenal second quarter by Galway, probably turned the game on its head, and from there on they never looked like losing after playing into the breeze. So many outstanding performances all over the field. We'll touch on the players in a few minutes, but every player showing great form ahead of championship. Like you said, it's only 3 weeks away from next weekend now, isn't it? You know what I mean? So yeah. It's a great time to be showing this kind of form and showing this kind of threat in front of goal. We were on about it here last week, but that we could even create goal chances. I think, we created 6, perhaps 7 goal chances over the course of the game. So a couple of the goals were rebounds, all right. Finishes by Adrian Toohey, and Kilkenny was on hand to finish another one by Conor Cooney as well. Outstanding performance. Just very little you could fault on it. People questioned the standard of defending. I wouldn't. I just think the attackers were just, from both sides, they were very much on song. And when you've got quality attackers like this, that they're in such good physical shape, they're so quick and strong, they're nigh on impossible to stop. So that's the case with the high scoring for me. It's not that the lack of defending was there. We've some quality defenders. Conor Prunty is probably one of the best fullbacks in the country, along with Dahi on the other end, who actually played 6. But we'll touch on the formations in a little bit. But to just hear this constant narrative afterwards, it's very infuriating. I find that people are complaining there's too much scores and people are scoring from out the field. I just don't understand it. We want to see scores. We don't want to see 12 points versus 11 like it was, 40 years ago. That's not the game we want. The game has come on so much now. I think it's a much better spectacle, that there's so much scores. And on yesterday's evidence, there's so many goal chances as well. So you're getting 7 goals in a game at the same point as well. So I think hurling is personally in rude health at the moment. The rules are a lot more relaxed this weekend as well. I felt, I don't know how many games you actually saw, but over the course of it, there was the advantage rule seemed to be a lot more let go, we'll say, at this point. So, which was another good thing to see. And I think it aided the contest. We saw Antrim against Clare was a fine game. Dublin and or Antrim against Wexford was a fine game. Dublin and Clare I thought was a decent game as well. And then obviously yesterday it was probably the pick of the games of the weekend. So all in all, a fine weekend. And we want to bring on championship fairly quickly. It's really getting towards championship fever now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just while you mentioned the advantage rule there, yeah, because it was saw the Galway match, but apart from that, now saw the Sunday game last night, and it was commented on in a couple of games, like Alan Kelly doing Cork and Limerick, as well, how the advantage rule was being implemented, and it was basically implemented like it was last year, in that they allowed the attack to develop, which is not in the rules anymore. You're not meant to do that. So I wonder, is there some sort of a narrative given to the referees to just, don't mind that whole rule there, let's carry on as you were, because it certainly seemed that way, because Fergal Hargan was the same way in Solomon yesterday, and it was everyone knew that if the rule was implemented again like that, it was going to improve the quality of games, and it so showed in those few games anyhow. And as you say, there were 3 or 4 cracking games over the course of the weekend. But just going back to Salthill naturally, and like for you, best performance of the Shannon era, you reckoned on Twitter yesterday, and I suppose there's been plenty of good performances, but the fact that you're saying that so willingly after a league game says probably as much as we need to know about how good Galway were, and a brilliant day to be in there, that's for sure.
That's for sure, yeah. Again, like, you just would miss the fans. For me anyway, it was just the nature of the turnaround. The bit of adversity, trailing by 7 points at one stage in the first half, to bounce back like that, and just to never panic. Just to kind of stick with the game plan that they were going with, and that they'd set out from the start, and to have faith in that, and just keep the heads. We did, like, years ago when you'd been following Galway hurling, that could have ended up in a rout, like. But there are different mindsets in this group of players these days, aren't they? Really, it's that they're never beaten. Like, Galway don't suffer hammerings really at all anymore. To be honest with you, it's just not in the psyche anymore. They always stick in it. They've faith and confidence in their own abilities, which is super to see. Before I go into the performance, you touched on Fergal Horgan there. At times he actually let too much go. I think he gave Brian Kincannon an awful tough day of it. He was kind of signaling Brian Kincannon was diving. He made signals a reference that he was diving 3 or 4 times. So whether that was the John Kiley influence coming back to bite Galway, I don't know. But there was a couple of clear fouls on Brian Kincannon that were definitely missed, which should have been free ins to Galway. But anyway, it's league. It doesn't really matter. But you hope come the heated championship battle that those frees will be given, because he was a couple of times he was taken clean out of it. Like, there was no doubt about it. He was hit with the shoulder into the chest, like, which isn't. And Fergal Horgan was pointing the shoulder and doing this diving motion, which made no sense. And I kind of just before the press conference started, it kind of had a quick chat with O'Neill, and he was kind of laughing away as well with this dive, and he was kind of rolling his eyes at Horgan. At Horgan's reference to diving, because they certainly weren't. Like, it made no sense at all. But just back on the performance again, yeah, for me, definitely, I think just the caliber of the team we were playing against. When you reflect back on last year, maybe the tip game in Salthill might have been a good performance as well in the league. Where they turned that around, but I feel conditions were a bit better that day. The conditions had a huge bearing on that game. The wind was like a gale blowing in Galway's favour in the second half, which had a huge bearing on the turnaround. Whereas this time, it was just the players that dug it out more than anything else. I suppose, reflecting back, Wexford last year, Wexford were poor. I thought, Galway were good, but Wexford were poor. We let the lead slip against Kilkenny. Against Tipperary, maybe we wouldn't do one other than Cathal Barrett sent it off. Now, that's still debatable. And Limerick, obviously, in the semi-final, probably, we didn't hurt our capabilities with decent display, but nothing to write home about. So that would be my opinion, that yesterday was Galway's stand-up performance of the O'Neill era. I don't know, would it be something you would agree with? Am I quick to draw judgment? Like 428, creating plenty goal chances, the lads hurling on song. I just feel that was probably the pick of the performance so far, and the system really coming together.
No, I definitely agree, and it's again, you base it on Galway's performance, but equally what they were against, and you were playing a strong Waterford team who were coming in on a high, having beaten Limerick. Again, as we've said throughout the league, you know, for Galway, it's the perfect group in that every team that they play really wants to have a go at Galway because they know it's the one game that, you know, probably isn't going to affect us in terms of championship preparations. That if we do meet Galway, it's going to be a long way down the line, so we can have a right crack off this. So Galway have always had that to handle every weekend they've gone out, and equally, you know, Galway can go out themselves and perform with the same mindset. Like, you know, you saw Limerick and Cork on Saturday night, for example. There was only one team that wanted to win that game, and it was the team that did go on and win it in Limerick. Like, Cork put out a pretty much second string 15 because for them it's all about being primed and having a few bits up their sleeve when those two teams meet in the Munster Championship in a few weeks' time. Whereas Limerick probably needed the win, having not picked up a win so prior to that in the league, you know. So there's none of that in terms of this game. Yes, Waterford with a strong team, pretty much as selected from what beat Limerick, bar one or two minor alterations, and started the game, as you say, brilliantly. Got the run Galway early on, looked to be cutting through us, kind of a bit certainly too easily for Shane O'Neill and the management team's perspective. But I guess we were hoping to see a step up from Galway, both prior to throw in off the back of the Tip game last 2 weeks ago, and then having seen the team that was named, you know, you're like looking at that team saying that is a lot more like what we're going to see for the Leinster semi-final. And then having conceded the poor start of 1-7-5 down at the first water break, and that stretched out to 1-9-5 shortly after, you know, you wanted to see a response from there, and by God did we get it. We scored 3-8 then for the remainder of the second quarter, and that really laid the platform. And then the second half, despite conceding an early enough goal to Desi Hutchison, you know, they never really looked like getting caught, did they?
No, absolutely not. No, but it just, something seemed to click in Galway. It's hard to understand what actually clicked, because I was sitting there in the stand and I was thinking, oh God, this could turn into a bit of a trimming here. And then all of a sudden, as you said, with that 3-8 in the second quarter from Galway, after Waterford went 7 clear, yeah. You just couldn't tell where it came out of, but something just kind of clicked. Maybe it was the fact that Joe kind of pushed inside. You know, we kind of found maybe our strongest setup maybe at that time. I think Cathal Mannion going to midfield had a big bearing as well on the game, and just Kincannon and Whedon really came to the fore from that point on. I thought the two of them were absolutely outstanding. I think there was nothing between the two of them for man of the match. Like, I know Whelan got the official man of the match, but I think we're saying it beforehand there. I personally might have given it to Kincannon. Like, he scored 2-2 and set up the other 2 goals, and had a couple more frees he should have given, and was just an outlet for that long ball in every single time he was out in front of his man and winning possession. His ball winning skills are, you know, unbelievable. Just in terms of in terms of defensively, I suppose early on they were a bit at sea. There was a lot of lads not tracking the runs, a lot of lads being sucked in, you know, under the dropping ball, whereas Waterford were breaking inside, and that was the case for the first goal for Prendergast. Prendergast started centre forward. Dahi was obviously picking him up, but Dahi kind of got caught wrong side, and Prendergast kind of ghosted him behind the dropping ball. And after Stephen Binna won it over Darren Morrissey, he fed Prendergast, and it was one of the easier finishes you're going to make. Nothing really Ian Murphy could do about it from that point. So, but like, there was a lot of space. Galway seemed to struggle with Waterford's off the ball running. There was probably an element of that where they weren't tracking the runs. You know, they were kind of getting sucked into the ball as it came in, and Waterford were running at them from deep. You know, people like Gleeson breaking forward, Caleb Lyons. It was just unbelievable. You know, what an athlete! Like, my God, scored 5 points and wing back. It's just, you know, scary player. You know, his potential is unbelievable. But we're thankfully not. Thankfully, he was on the wrong side of it for a finish. But like, that would be something, you know, most teams will be looking to curb now. His threat from deep is phenomenal. But maybe there's a case at Galway in terms of it's a fairly new defensive setup, and you know, they're still getting to adjust. They're still adjusting. Like, Garage Mac at 3. You know, Dahi at 6. You've kind of two relatively inexperienced cornerbacks that started in Shane Cooney and Darren Morrissey, and then your Finton wingback was fairly inexperienced as well. So Pádraig Mannion would, you know, probably have a wealth of experience no more than Dahi and Garage Mack. But Garage Mack and Dahi are playing in, you know, unfamiliar positions, maybe at inter-county level. I know Garage Mack has played a good few league games and stuff like that, and Dahi played in the half back line, should I say, when he was starting out. But it's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see whether we persist with that. Now, I thought, by the large, I thought maybe the spine of the team was slightly stronger. Maybe people might disagree with that, with Garage Mack at 3 and Dahi at 6. Dahi had a couple of ropey moments, but I thought he did well on the most part, and got a nice point at the end, which received a fine cheer from the Galway, the few Galway players, and you know, whoever else was there, maybe administrators or whatever. But yeah, what did you make of the defensive setup, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, similar to you in that, you know, I think it's a sector that we've been tinkering with every weekend in the league. So, you know, you're not going to land on a set straight away, and they're going to, you know, work it brilliantly. Definitely, I thought Garrosh did very well at 3 again. Again, an awful game to have to play fullback in. It was just dragged all over the place. There was space in front of him, space behind him, but some of the balls he was pushed, like, you know, and winning them ahead of again, multiple markers throughout the game. Like, you know, you couldn't even say he won them ahead of this fella, like, you know. I thought Dahi did a lot of good things. You could see there was one brilliant one in the second half where he burst forward and took a pass off, was it Nyland? I can't remember off the top of my head, and then laid a pass off to Sean Loftus for one of his points. It was a real turtle. What you see them doing an awful lot of that running off the shoulder, and that's what he brings to it. Probably would have liked to see him boss the game a bit more from 6, but then, you know, when you consider where he was 2 weeks ago against Tip, I think it was a major step in the right direction towards what we know he's capable of. And certainly for me, I'd like to see the same 6 backs go out next weekend. We obviously might have an issue there with Shane Cooney. We'll touch on injuries in a while. Have you any updates on lads? But by and large, you know, definitely the half back line for me, that could be your set half back line for championship. Pádraig 5, Dahi 6, and Finton 7. Like Finton, you wouldn't even have known Finton was there a lot of the time yesterday, and that's, as a defender, that's a good thing in many ways, in that, you know, didn't do a lot right or didn't do a lot wrong either at the same time. You know, just kind of a lot more seemed to happen down Pádraig's side of the field, and certainly on the inside line. But yeah, you probably would have liked to see the organisational side of things, you know, be run a bit better in terms of, you know, Waterford played a lot of little balls in over the top. Would say, think of Kieran Bennett's point in the first half. You know, a ball popped into space for him. The Shane Bennett's goal as well came from a similar little ball flicked in over the top into space, and that is a lot of space to be leaving in front of your goalie. So there needs to be a combination of Éanna Murphy obviously in goal, because he can see everything that's happening in front of him. Garage at full, and Dahi at 6, and then Pádraig as well out in the right flank. But, you know, playing in that position now, Pádraig Mannion doesn't have as much responsibilities in terms of organising those around him. You know, his own side of the field to look after there at 5. So maybe that communication is something that needs to be worked on a bit in the next week or so. But look, at these lads all know how to play the positions. It's just a case of getting used to, you know, Dahi having someone actually behind him other than his goalie, and equally Garage back, knowing that he's the last line of defence, and having to work with his centre back and his half back line to organise it in front of him and try and make his life as easy as possible. Because, you know, the less we see of Garage back and earning in the game too, and more than what I'm saying about Finton there, the better really in terms of how Galway are actually going. So by and large, yeah, I thought, like, we knew Waterford's running game, when they get it going, it's very, very hard to stop. You know, you saw what they did against Kilkenny in the second half, the All-Ireland semi-final last year, you know, and they had it going quite nicely at times. The likes of Lions coming through, again, as you say, an absolute freak. Like, once he gets up ahead of steam, there's nothing you can do with him. Like, you know, like, he scored 5 points and he probably had 3 ways with it. Like, but And you Gleeson coming through a couple more times, and Kieran Bennett obviously more advanced this weekend. But same thing from him. They're very hard to stop when they get up ahead of this team like that. So a great challenge for Galway to face at this stage of the year, and one they'll take an awful lot of learnings from. But overall, very, very encouraged by it. And we conceded 323, obviously, which is concerning, but still we scored 428. The kind of game it was, that's just kind of how it went. Sometimes games are a bit like that. It's kind of like the days of under 12 and under 14 where the managers like, just lads, just go out there and enjoy yourselves and hurl away, and kind of came across a bit like that at times. But not that any of us were complaining about that. It was brilliant to watch. But yeah, and obviously, central to that was Galway's 4 goals, and obviously it felt like a kind of a switch was just turned on in some ways, and that like, all right, we won't bother now for the first 2 weeks, but then today now, lads, we'll have a right cut at it. And we talked extensively last week about how to go about creating the goals, and we touched on the tip game last year and the couple of goals they created, and there were some top drawer moves in that game last year. So we knew it was in the players to do it. But again, we spoke about the importance of having the right personnel in the right positions, and we were very much of the opinion of Conor Whelan needs to be close to goal, and that wasn't something that they went with yesterday. He's kind of stayed out around centre forward, but Concannon was the one that they pushed in close to goal, and that was the real difference maker for me. And that every time a ball came into Concannon, he just turned and went one direction, and that's what you need for an inside forward. And equally, a combination of that, just having that desire and want to actually go for it when you do get it, and equally the runners coming through. We spoke about that again last week, and the first goal I thought was a prime example of that. Concannon got the ball, and as a half hour you could have stood up and watched him see what he did with it, but Adrian Toohey burst through from 40 yards out and wasn't tracked because he was just gone too suddenly and too quick. And he got on the end of it and got the ball on the back of the net. So that's what you need to see from players, and it was brilliant to see Galway going out and actually doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I think we might have stumbled upon the inside too. With a link man in between the half forward line and the full forward line. I think that inside two should be now Joe Kenning and Brian Concannon, because you have with them both, you have 2 deadly finishers, and you have 2 lads with unbelievable vision and ability to create goals for others. Like Concannon last year was probably robbed of an all-star, truth be told. Like the amount he created and scored, and just his threat in general. Like if you leave space in front of Concannon, he's going to destroy you. And then you have the vision that like someone like Kenning, like my God, like the pass for to set up Conor Cooney's chance that ended in Brian Concannon's goal. That flick through. And then the flick through for Concannon's the second one, the 4th goal of the game, where he managed to just kind of hold off his man and just flick it through after Whelan turned it over. Which was phenomenal. Like just this vision, like the peripheral vision out of Kenning is just, it's ridiculous. Like, in the skill level he has to execute it, And I suppose one thing about keeping him close to goal is when the ball comes in, he's actually, he'll actually have that bit of a breather, in terms of like where he's out around the 45, I suppose, you have to be moving and showing for pretty much all the time, or you're working back the field. Whereas you're maybe keeping his endurance and his legs and his stamina for the game. By keeping them inside, you're probably keeping them a bit more, keeping them, making them last a bit longer, should I say. So, yeah, I think a huge part of the goals as well would have been, someone like Whelan or Conor Cooney getting flicks in, to turn over ball. We see for Concannon's second one as well. It was Whelan turning over Austin Gleeson. Like that work rate out of Whelan is just, it's second to none in hurling for me. It's just I don't know any other forward who could do what he does in terms of turnover. He's like an actual defender, the way he's able to tackle and the strength and power of him there, and how he can turn over defenders coming out with the ball is just, it's incredible, and it's a huge asset. And I would have said, as we said last week, we thought that the combination should be Whelan and Concannon inside. But for me now, on that view and yesterday, it's probably Kenning and Concannon, with Whelan doing the work outside, and Whelan could score from deep. Like Whelan's game yesterday, my God, 6 points in play, he took on how many men? Like, he just seems to never get tired whatsoever. He took on, every time he seemed to get the ball, he was willing to run with it and try and beat his man and jumping through tackles and bursting through, and just phenomenal. Another good sign from the attack, we probably should mention, was Conor Cooney showing a nice bit of form and at a good time to do it too. Like, he's probably been heavily criticised in a lot of quarters. You know, you see it on social media, and for me, it makes no sense. I actually thought he was hurling reasonably well. He went to another level yesterday for me. 3 points on target. He probably had a goal chance. He would have been disappointed he didn't stick. But other than that, I thought he had a fine game. Thought, you know, he worked very hard like he's been doing over the last season under O'Neill in general. He got a flick in there at one point. I think that resulted in a point as well for Galway. Scored 3 points, working back the field. I think there was a lot of positives in Conor Cooney's performance, and I think on that viewing, he's probably looks pretty much nailed on to start for championship now at this case. So we're gradually edging towards that championship team. I think Patrick Ardenway, like it's you're looking at Kenning inside, Conor Cooney, the link man, Whelan on the 40, probably Evan Island on that showing after coming on the subs, and you know, what a display of finish. And he's like a Dean Rock or something like that for the Dublin footballers. Is they circle back out the man who gets the ball inside, and you just pop it out to Ireland, and you know it's going over the bar. Like, it's just any shot from 60 yards out, it's literally going over the bar. He's what Jim Gavin and all these lads in Dublin and Dizzy Farrell and all these lads would call a finisher. It's just you just pop it back out to him, and he just takes the shot. You just leave it back to him. So that's probably 5 of the attackers. There's maybe one spot that's open there, and you have a whole host of forwards kind of vying for that now. You have your Adrian Toohey, who probably should get another run, I'd imagine, against Cork to see how he did. Joseph Cooney's another one vying there. Then you have Kevin Cooney, you've Niall Burke, you've Jason Flynn. You've plenty of options. Jam Mannion, who we haven't touched on, who will probably find it hard to break back in now, truth be told, you know, which is probably disappointing for him. The red card probably couldn't have come at a worse time, because now we've stumbled across this attacking formation. So it's really a lot of positives in attack. And sure, any day you score 428, you're going to win the game by and large. Like, we don't, there's something seriously wrong. I think Liam Cahill was saying afterwards in the press, it's the press afterwards. I didn't catch him now, but I think he was saying if he said he came to Salton, he scored 323, he'd have been saying we won this game, and we probably won it with a bit to spare, which wasn't the case, which is mad at the moment. But yeah, I think, Patrick, would you be in agreement that I think we've kind of stumbled along the formation in attack now, and we pretty much, I'd imagine, 5 of the forwards locked down on this viewing?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, because, you know, again, how they're going to play is kind of hasn't changed, and that, you know, you're going to have that 4th player around the middle third, kind of midfield, half hour line floating around. And for me, again, Nyland solidified just that should be him. You know, he was on a lot of ball actually back in his own half back line yesterday, which probably hadn't seen as much of in the first couple of games. And he delivered some brilliant ball in, and before half time especially, there was a couple of right good balls played into the inside line. And then, as you say, he's always that man there on your shoulder to pop over a score. And you know, he's just not being tracked in it, like, really, and he's punishing teams every week, like, you know. Yeah. It's great, like, a long way to continue. But
how do you track him? Like, this is the thing, which is Galway have an embarrassment to riches in attack. Like, you have someone tracking Joe, you have someone tracking Kincannon, you have someone tracking Whelan. You're suddenly running out of man markers, aren't you? Really, like, you know. So that leaves someone like Nyland, who they'll say, okay, he won't hurt us as much as the other 3, but geez, he can still hurt you an awful lot.
Yeah, well, whatever, but a marker of any description might help, because he seemed to have 20 yards of space every time he got the ball. But it's great. I won't complain about it. He only needs about 3 yards of space, and that'll do him to get it over. So with 20, he'll definitely do the job. But no, but I do think that's the role that suits him. Like, you know, and then you have your ball winners around him, be it Whelan at centre forward, which worked very, very well yesterday. And then you could have Conor Cooney or Joseph Cooney or Adrian Toohey on your wings. You know, I think, again, as well, yesterday, probably Cahill again solidified why it's midfield for him now at this stage. You know, it's was kind of around centre forward and half forward line for a good bit of the first half. Got a lot of shots off, which you would expect them to score, and they didn't kind of go over, but still, he wasn't overly involved in the play. But then when he went midfield, you know, he got his point in the second half and had way more bearing on the game. So He was certainly, again, for me, nailed down as midfielder now for championship. And again, our backs, we have a much better idea now of where we're heading than what we did 2 days ago. Anyhow, that's for sure. So there's tinkering to be done still. You know, he'll certainly like to see his backs go out and perform better as a unit in terms of what they're actually conceding against Cork next weekend. But we're well on the way in that regard. And you know, I just thought, you know, immediately in the first game against Westmeath, we thought that, you know, Galway looked sharp here, but it was grand being sharp against Westmeath. I could be sharp myself against Westmeath, but going out against Waterford like that, just that I thought it was hugely evident just how sharp Galway are, and the speed and the accuracy at which they did everything. Like some of the stick passing was just sensational. I thought just then. Kincannon again is the one that springs to mind, and you know, the two he played for the goals probably were actually a small bit off, but they're good enough that, you know, Canning had a simple touch in the hurling into his hand, and equally Tui kind of put hurled straight to the ball and met it on the volley for the first one, and then scored the follow up. But one in the second half to Cahill for Cahill's point was fantastic. Right in the corner, the bottom left corner as we're watching on the camera. Won a ball and turned out and pinged a beautiful ball straight into Cahill's hand, and he put it over. So when you've lads playing with that confidence and that belief and just the confidence in themselves to take all these things on, because that's not an easy ball to play when you've a Cahill Mannion coming at full tilt towards you. You know, that ball has to be put into the exact right position for the move to come off. So it's hugely positive to see lads hurling that well, and what's really evident is just how much they're actually enjoying their hurling, enjoying the system they're playing under O'Neill, and it's really coming out in their performance now, isn't it?
Oh, for sure, definitely. I mean, you touched on it there. Like it's a brilliant brand of hurling they're playing at the moment. There's, you know, it's so enjoyable to watch, and especially when we are creating goal chances like we did last weekend. There's going to be games where it's not going to be like that, and it's going to be a dogfight. It's part of be a point scoring shootout, but my God, we're as good as any team at being able to score like from distance. Like you have so many lads who can actually bisect the post from 60 yards plus. Like it's no hassle at all to them, but on the run, like it's just incredible. Like we even saw Dahi saunter forward just earlier and scoring from deep, like, which is, I don't recall him scoring too many points in Galway. It might be a collector's item, and hopefully there's a couple more to come before the end of the year. Just on defence there before I move on, I will say one thing about having Dahi at 6 is it allows Pádraig Mannion to go into his best position, which is 5. For me, there's no question mark. Pádraig Mannion is 5. That's where he hurls his best. If needs be, he can hurl 6, or he can hurl sweep, or he can hurl elsewhere. But his best position is 5. From a Galway standpoint, and I think on the evidence of what we've seen down through the years, that's where it is. So like you have a formidable half back line there. If you have Pádraig Mannion 5, Dahi at 6, and Fintan at 7, you touched on, yeah, it's probably a quiet game for Fintan. I'd say his possessions were limited, particularly in the first half. He was showing a lot down the line. You mightn't have seen it because he didn't get picked up, but he was making a lot of these runs that maybe Joseph Cooney made last year in the tip game. Do you remember down along the inline where Galway had possession from deep, or maybe the far side of the field, and he was just taking off the field and looking for it. So that might be something that they're trying to implement there as well. In terms of Pádraig, didn't make many similar runs, but definitely Fintan is given that license to tear up the field, use your athleticism there, and try and pick off a point, because he's well capable of it. I suppose the injury front, maybe the injury to Johnny Cohen, like nobody ever wants to see an injury, and I hope it's not too serious, but it kind of did. Like that was the catalyst for making the switches in a lot of positions. I think Cahill, for the most part, you mentioned there that he started at centre forward, and he did, but from maybe 10-15 minutes on, he went in the full forward line, and Whelan came out. And like, I don't see Cahill Mannion's best role being wing forward, truth be told, or being in the full forward line, truth be told. It's just not where you're going to get that influence from play from, when his passing range and his ability to score from distance isn't being utilised as the full. So when Johnny Cohen went off, Cahill Mannion went out to midfield, and Joe went in. just on the midfield partnership, I suppose you'd mentioned touch Colin, and I thought he had a great game. I thought Sean Loftus had a great game in midfield as well. I thought it was one of his better performances. You can see he had a new lease of life out in midfield. It's clear he obviously prefers hurling in midfield and cornerback. I don't think I have never spoke to him about it or anything like that, but I'd say you just by by the brand of hurling, it wouldn't take Einstein to work it out that he prefers the midfield, and he got on a lot of ball, he did a lot of work, he chipped in with 2 points, and he's running off the shoulder, and his ability to kind of float into a pocket of space and get his shot away is something that's a huge asset. Now maybe it's not as a starter, maybe it's Johnny Cohen and Cathal Mannion as a starter. Maybe with 20 minutes to go, maybe you're in a game that's opened up with a bit of space and stuff like that. Maybe you bring him on for a Johnny Cohen and you let him float around and you let him pick up a bit of where the game will become a bit more ragged. Maybe that's a role that you could be there from, because depending on Johnny Cohen's injury, I'm hoping it's not too serious. You'd imagine he's probably the perfect fight for Cathal at the moment. But Sean Loftus has certainly done himself no harm at all. In terms of that position, in terms of being the third choice there for a midfielder or something like that, I think he can kind of do it all. He can kind of get back the field and make tackles, and he can also drive forward. He's kind of a box to box midfielder. Maybe I suppose before I say that, we've totally missed David Burke as well. For that cameo role he showed against Limerick, he's a huge option there as well. So we've an embarrassment of riches, I think, at the moment in a lot of positions. Patrick Hathaway, it's the squad depth. O'Neill is constantly beating that drum about how he's trying to build as competitive squad as possible. It's one of his go-to lines when we ask him questions on the media. But in fairness to him, it's something that he's abided by, and the management team have abided by. We have a lot of strength and depth there. Like, even saw TJ Brennan coming on. Jack Fitzpatrick coming on again. Like, these, we're getting a lot of minutes into a lot of fresher faces, and it's super to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fully agreed. And I think Loftus, as you say, he certainly didn't nail down a starting position for championship, but he put himself in the mix anyhow, and that's all he could do really yesterday. And he probably has, again, no more than certain lads in certain positions. He has solidified that his best position is out around that middle third. He has the defensive capabilities and that mindset as well, having played a lot of sweeper, and it was a brilliant track on, was it Glasson Gleeson yesterday in the first half, and small bit unlucky to give away a free, but probably was the right decision by Harkin, and that he probably went down with the hurl as opposed to a cross. But that he has that mindset that it could work with him being sort of more defensive anchor of the two midfields in midfield, depending on who's there with him. And equally, he has an eye for a score going forward. So he has the tools to be a very effective midfielder going forward. So very pleasing for him. That was kind of him at 12 and Adrian Toohey at 10 were two of the sort of standout names and switches made in the team at that start of the week when it came out. So I think both did themselves no harm at all with their displays. And again, for two lads like that who we spoke with off air as well, have played so much in so many different positions, I think both definitely deserve another run out in the same position next weekend again, and just see how they get on, and whether they do enough then to actually nail down a spot for championship is up to them. But at least that they're then have the mindset going forward in training now for the next 3 weeks. They'll be playing in those sort of positions as well, rather than going back in a cornerback and wing back next week, and everything that you did on Sunday being put in the bin really. So that was again very pleasing. I think another thing for our inside line, and the quality ball that was going in was obviously was excellent for the most part yesterday. But equally, they had the ability to, Kincannon could start a run in front of the post 13 yards out and meet a ball in the 45, and that wasn't, you couldn't do that unless your half forward line had done their job in sucking out the Waterford half back line. So I think in that regard we did very well at creating space for the lads inside. You saw there was one excellent example pointed out on was it on TG4 or on the Sunday game, where the Galway players all filtered across to the terrace side of the field and created a huge hole for an Murphy puck out, which went straight down to Canning, and he won it header prunty and stuck it over the bar. So that's excellent coaching and excellent implementation by players on the field to create that and to create that space, as I say. So now, in fairness, I thought Waterford did it to a good degree as well. At the same time, the amount of bodies in that middle third was again amazing. It's just the way the game has gone now. But certainly, I think, you know, for an inside forward for Kincannon, it was the dream sort of day yesterday. The ball coming in and so much grass every way he looked, you know. And then he's always getting out in front, and he's so good at winning that ball first time, be it just grabbing it straight away or taking a touch and winning it then. I'm sure when he has it in his hand with that much space around him, he's only heading one direction, and it'll take a good man to stop him anyway, that's for sure.
No, you said it, yeah, that's for sure. He's like, his goal threat is unbelievable, like, and you know, it's great to see, because that has been one of the things that have been probably problematic for Galway for the last 4 years anyway, is goals. So now we look like, if that are the two that stay inside, you know, there is goal threats there. There is goals there in those two at the very least. You know, there is Joe. If he gets the ball in hand 20, 30 yards out, there's likely a goal chance, and Kilcannon will be able to take on his man, run at them, and maybe at the very least draw a sin bin or, you know, a penalty or something like that. Kilcannon's movement is fantastic, isn't it? Like, he's such an intelligent hurler as well, like, and how he's able to time his run, because that's not. It's not an easy thing to do at times, to judge the ball coming in, and, you know, you time your run, or, you know, Limerick are probably the specialists at it, aren't they? Those that inside line. But Galway, they showed yesterday in someone like Kincannon and Canning for the puck out, like you mentioned, that they're well capable of it as well, and they're well capable of using a bit of using their intelligence to get out there in front. Like, one thing that was very noticeable yesterday was Canning's overall intelligence and his hurling brain. Like, it's huge. Yeah. Like, just his use of his body and his use of his spare hand when he's holding off a man, or he's getting there, or he's getting a little flick in the hurl beforehand, maybe on the defender before the ball gets to them. Like, you know, just throws them off that little bit off balance. It's so, you know, you wouldn't spot it unless you're really, really looking out for it. But it's just that level of intelligence to there, and to do it in such a way that you're not getting pinged by the referee, you know, which is always the most important thing. Now, there could be another referee that could get you another day, but just that level of intelligence there. You touched on Adrian too and Sean Loftus, and probably the versatility has hampered them a small bit over the last 2 years, hasn't it? Like, they've been trialed in a lot of positions, and we did touch on it on there. And it's probably got to the case now where you'd love to just tell those lads, maybe whatever Tuesday evening in training next day, right, for the rest of the year now, your focus is on being midfielder for Sean Loftus, and for Adrian too, your focus is being wing forward and operating out there around the middle third, and that's where we're going to eye you up. We're not eyeing you up now. I'd say wing back in terms of Tui's case, and Loftus is a cornerback. We'd say those days are done. We found our options elsewhere. That's where we want you to be pushing for position, pushing for start play. And I think that would do both players the world good, wouldn't it? Like, I think, you know, just that you could focus on it, right? Okay, I'm adjusting now. I don't have to readjust my game, like, from Sunday to Tuesday, like you mentioned earlier on, like you touched on, Patrick. Like, I'm going to focus on wing forward now. How can I get the very most of myself? I can concentrate on that. I can maybe do watching some of the other players, you know, out there at the moment. You know, you can do a bit of work by yourself, you know, away from it as well. You can watch a bit of video on how the best wing forwards or midfielders operate in the game, and you can learn a lot. You can even learn a lot in training from a few of the boys that they're training with as well. But I think that would be something that you'd hope that Galway will do, you know, in the future now, that management will say to those that, because at this point, I think we've enough of options defensively. I think there's a lot of lads there that we would be, injuries provided. Like, I think, you know, you have full back line, you have Darren Morrissey, Shane Cooney, you've TJ Brennan, you've Jack Fitzpatrick, you've a whole host of other players that you'd be willing to throw in now. Aidan Hart, sorry, like, you know, just, you know, Mr. Versatility, like, keep him. You can put him practically anywhere between 2, 4, 5, 7 along there. So yeah, that's what I'd be hoping anyway in terms of those two lads you mentioned at the start, that they will be told now from now on, please God, like, that these are your positions, this is where we want you to be pushing for, and, you know, give them a bit of, you know, structure and tunnel vision of what they want, the management team want from them.
Yeah, and equally, what that does as well is, if you're another half hour there Joseph Cooney or a Conor Cooney that you now know that, geez, I've this lad, I've Adrian Joey here behind me now who's going fairly all right. So I need to up it myself, and I don't have the luxury of kind of being the sole option as for 10 or 12 as I might have been a few weeks ago as well. So it can work both ways, and that it can improve those around them as well. Knowing that there's a lad there beside you vying for your exact same spot on the team. So no, I think it could only be healthy for everyone involved going forward, really. I guess we've kind of touched a lot on the individuals and the different positions that lads picked up during the game, and for the most part, I guess, you know, Shane O'Neill would have gone out yesterday hoping to uncover and to solve certain conundrums that he would have had, no doubt, over the last number of weeks. But to be honest, I don't think he could have expected to come away from the game with so many positives in terms of lads performing so well, and equally certain positions lads probably nailing down a spot for championship, because literally, as we said last week, about half the team was decided last week, and only about two positions on the field were actually nailed down as to who was going to play in them. But I think in that regard, we're way further down the line now, based on just 70 minutes yesterday. Now, look at we're going to have a similar spectacle about next week in Cork, and you'd like to see lads again back that up. But I mean, he must have been delighted after the game yesterday in the press conference.
Yeah, he was noticeably pleased. In fairness to him, like there was the usual trying to play it down a small bit, like, and you know, we could see the 323, we wouldn't be happy about that, like, but you know, that's understandable in the, you know, the media trained age, and the lads are so careful, and they don't want to give opposition any tools to, you know, to extra motivation and stuff like that. And at the same point, you want to give a stick to beat the players with in training this coming week as well, like, you know what I mean, like, you know, 323 isn't good enough, etc. But I fully agree. We're 70 minutes, like, it's amazing what 70 minutes can do. We sat here a matter of days ago and we're saying, geez, we have not got a clue with the championship team, whereas now I think you're very, very close on this. Like, there's maybe a couple of positions up for grabs. There's probably 3 or 4 positions really up for grabs, and the rest are now solved, which is, like, we seem to forget as well, like, since O'Neill has come in, he's had a really interrupted, you know, managerial stint, hasn't he? Like, with COVID and everything, there's been breaks, there's been not lack of opportunity to work with players. So every 70 minutes he gets to oversee these players. Like we need to remember, I know he's got Fergal, Healy and David Ford with him, but he's still, at the end of the day, himself and John Fitzgerald, like, they don't know Galway hurling the ins and out of it entirely. They don't know, you know, players coming through, like, say, you know, like even this last year, they would have picked up Jack Hastings and Stephen Barrett from Championship, and players like that, Keane Burke and a few more. You know, like, they still are getting to know their personnel and the players available and the depth of the squad, and, you know, trying to find the best systems for Galway. Like, one thing we haven't seen this year, the sweeper, non-existent from a Galway standpoint. We're way more attacking. We're fronting up, and we're saying, look, at whatever, if you score 323, we're going to score 428, and that's how the game is going to be played. And I think shootouts, by and large, they suit Galway. Like, that craziness brings out the natural ability in the Galway players, which is fantastic to see. And, like, I think pound for pound, we've as much talent as any team in the country in terms of raw talent. So that's what we want. Like, you want like the likes of Cathal Mannion, Joe Kenny, Evan Ireland, Conor Wheel, and, you know, these lads, Brian Gannon, these lads expressing themselves and hurling to the best of their ability, and sometimes off the cuff can do that. So, like, we're still learning our systems, and, like, I think O'Neill is one of these managers who's not just going to stick with a set system. He's not going to be your Brian Cody, you pick your best 15 like that. I think there are days, like come Cork next week, he might try something different because of the challenges Cork will pose at you, but it'll be minute adjustments in personnel that might eventually revert back to the strongest team that we might see. Like, he will try stuff. Like, in fairness to the management team, you've got to hold your hand up and say they're willing to experiment. We've seen so much experimentation over this league alone. Like, we've seen Joe Kenning at midfield. We've seen a whole host of things tried that, you know, maybe we wouldn't have tried maybe 2 or 3 years back. We would have might have sticked with the same thing. We're trying to play a different way. We're trying to get the best quality ball into the attack, whereas Galway had become known there for a while as a long ball team, and, you know, with great success at that. But I think teams had adjusted to it by the time maybe 2019 came around, and it was, you get bodies around the drop of ball, and you don't give Johnny Glynn the chance to catch it and win it, and etc. like that. I think we're now in a strong place as we've been since 2017 with squad wise in terms of how we're setting up, and we're only going to improve from there. Like, I think there was an article in the Sunday Times saying 3 of Galway's players are 30 plus, or 5 of Galway's potential starting players were 30 plus. But I think that's doing a disservice to the young lads that have stepped up as well. And there was a narrative there that maybe Galway's those 30 players, probably it's a complete outlier in terms of the squads. I think there's only been a handful of 30 plus players of won Ireland's in the last 2 years. Maybe Tip probably are the outlier for that one. But no, I'd be delighted with the way things are shaping up, Patrick, for Championship. I'm very pleased with that performance by and large, and I think with a lot of positive signs overall. And I think we're so much further down than we were a week previous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned Shane O'Neill and John Fisher, like, not obviously being still fairly new to Galway hurling, so it's great to see that they're using tribe talk and stealing all our ideas for team formations and how to line up and whatnot. But yeah, so we'll looking forward to getting brought on board in an official advisory role now in the next year or so, David. We're a real the next step in our managerial career. And I guess while we're on the subject of managerial careers, a big development for myself over the weekend in the fantasy hurling side of things. Great week had again into the top 10 in the country now. So big gains made for yourself as well. Jumped up into the top 15 in the Tribe Talk mini league as well, which, as we all know, is the most competitive mini league going. With currently 4 of the top 10 in the country in our mini league. So things shaping up nicely with 1 round to go. No more transfers to be made, so team selections will be hoping they won't be as controversial as they were this weekend, with the likes of Patrick Horgan and TJ Reid being left out. It caused plenty of conundrums for managers when they were making their 4 switches this weekend. But in terms of the big players, they came up with the goods this weekend, didn't they? They were racking up big scores. And for yourself, TK coming back in there, didn't have to make a switch on your captain or anything, and he went and registered 20 points Saturday evening. So he got a mammoth 74 points return this weekend. So a good weekend all around on that front.
That's for sure. And you made the old switch of TK to captain as well. You know, you're shrewd enough operator to realise the points are going to come. Yeah. Wasn't a perfect weekend. You would have mammoth score. I think 300 and something points, 338 was I, would I be right in saying last time I saw. Yeah. So no, I made a couple of slight errors in stuff. I went with Shamie Kennan. I think I was hoping Kennan might start full forward against Westmeath, and I was playing, maybe a hat trick there or something along those lines. Anyway, I was reliably informed in that he played wing forward at the start, and just the stuff of nightmares that he was away from goal. Yeah. That's not where you want Shamie Kennan playing if you're after wasting a transfer to draft him in. And worst part, I got rid of Evan Island for him as well, so that didn't help. Like when Evan Island came on and got 4 points in play. It was between Kennan and Caleb Lyons as my last transfer. I think I brought in. So this was about a 30-point swing in that. I went with Kennan. Poor choice. I drafted in Jason Ford as one of my other transfers. Got rid of Patrick Horgan. Another bad decision maybe. Although Ford did rack it up, but yeah, Lyons is 5 points. It was a huge one for you. You got him back in pretty quickly afterwards. After he sent it off, he let us down initially, but he could have scored 1-3 that day. That day he was sent off. So. He would have been never leaving anyone's team if he scored that. But what a player like him, what a performance! And you reap the rewards of the 41 points of him bringing him in. It was well worth that transfer.
Yeah, it was he was the 4th and final one I got in. So, and to be honest, I had Kieran Bennett in my head as well, because he's obviously been scoring and he moved up wing forward as well this weekend. So. But then when it actually came to making the decision, I forgot about him, thanks to God, and put in Lyons. So that worked out nicely. The other ones switched over the captain to Tony Kelly, and got Michael Breen in there as well, and Aaron Gillan, both did all right, 17, 18 points each. But And we just touch on the overall scores in the league at the minute. We've Michael Kafke Ackle is still leading the way. Good score again for him at the weekend. Very consistent there, and 307 points, and he's the first man in the league to break the 1,000-point barrier. He's up to 1,009. Only 12 points ahead of second place Conor Gallagher from Ards and Raha, Ardara United's name of his team. He's on 997. Malcolm Harton behind him. He had a huge score, 351 at the weekend, definitely in the top couple in the country, no doubt. He's on 977. Then myself back and forth on 966. You're there in 15th place, I make it. Yeah. Good week, 276 up to 871. I see like we've amazing the difference in, like, we'll say Sean Rogan now, not a great week for him, 190 points. He's dropped way back down to 70 overall. So just shows how quickly things can change. And just in terms of another man who's been making steady gains, going under the radar the last few weeks is Chunky. He's up to 35th, I think it is, in our league. We'll just get him up here. 300 points. 300 points at the weekend. A fine score. Caelan Ryan's equally Conor Whelan, Joe Canning racked up big scores. Conor Whelan is captain, so 58 points there. Impressive week for Chunky. Hasn't obviously done a tap the last few weeks. He's still bringing up the 114 points, a measly return this week. Looking at the team, Joe Canning, Tony Kelly did well for him, but that aside now, it was pretty disappointing showing. So look, you get out with what you put in, I guess, and if you put a bit of work in, you can make these decisions. But the overall leader nationally is Sean Duffin from Tiernan Oak, 320 points the weekend, 1,024 he's on, just ahead of Michael Cafferty. So it'd be great to see Tribe Talk potentially win it out. Michael is probably our best chance of doing so, but equally Conor Gallagher now isn't too far away on 997. So again, the key thing is we've no transfers this week, so whatever we've picked, that's what we're going to go with this weekend. So team selection is going to really probably decide this by and large. But certainly in a healthy position in that regard, and I think we're both pretty happy enough with the 15s that we have going to take with us into the last round, David.
I held TJ. So I'm expecting 124 or something like that for him in the final day. just to really, a quiet evening for TJ. So he'll be raring to go ahead of championship. Dara Fitzgibbon was another one I kept. Ronan Maher as well. I elected to go against removing defenders because by and large outside Cayman lines they don't really score that heavily. So trying to get the attack as strong as possible. Cannon now was a bit of an error in judgment, but I was gambling a small bit to try and get back into it, and it didn't work. But anyway, I'd be happy enough. You'd be happy enough yourself. Any chance of an outright win? Have you any chance of an outright win? God, don't be giving me this Yera. Don't be giving me this Kerry Yera and say you're going to win it.
At the minute, I have 58 points to make up on the leader. I'm 10th overall behind Sean Duffin. So it would take a fair return now next weekend, and it would take a lot to go my way. But look, we're in with a shout anyhow, and we'll be hoping to make a bit more headway, and if we might sneak into the prizes, be a fair return. But I mean, I guess our chances of the Galway Jersey staying in the county are certainly they're better than they were a few weeks ago. And we were, and in terms of staying within the group, I don't know. I don't know what'll happen in that regard, but look, don't worry about that. But I'm happy with the team I have next week. No more than yourself. I was between TJ and Hoggy who to keep in, and just for myself, I said, looking at the Cork team, I said they're going to go full strength next week no matter what. So I said Hargan probably guaranteed to start, whereas Reid, the only reservation I have is that Kilkenny have topped the group already, and just if he wants to maybe keep him fresh for championship, we don't know, we'll see. But look, things an exciting weekend ahead, no doubt. That's been great to have it now the last 2 weeks. Really enjoyed being part of it. So yeah, it's fantastic. Some fundraiser, that's for sure. I don't know what they're getting out of it up in Dungannon, but fair play to them. It's a brilliant idea, and the championship game is launched now, so we'll be getting that going now in a few weeks' time as well. But we'll recover from the exertions of the league now first. But yeah, look, we'll wrap up there, David. Just before we finish off, say a big thanks to Tony Burke Motors for coming on board again for the league. Brilliant to have them on board for all 10 shows from this year's Allianz League. So been fantastic for us, and made things a lot easier for us in terms of, you know, getting the show, as you've said before, and that. So thanks a million to the lads again for coming on. And as we say every week, you know, if anyone is looking for a car and we're heading towards that time of year where we're going to be switching to 212 from the 211s, you know, so we'll definitely be sending you in towards Tony Burke's to Toyotas, of course, the best bit of cars in the world. Don't forget that. So if you head in that direction to the lads in Ballybrit, they'll sort you out, and you know, good lads in there. So yeah, that's it really for this week. Tell you, we're in jovial mood after what we saw in Salthill there on Sunday, and hopefully more of it to come down Lee side next weekend. But we'll be back in a couple of days' time with a preview of the Cork game. So be sure to join us for that. And yeah, this is it, last round of the league, and after that, 2 weeks off, and then we're tearing into championship when the real stuff heats up. So getting closer all the time. So really looking forward to it, and speak to you again later in the week.